welcome to the Woman Show. I'm Lenina Rassool, and today we are speaking about patriarchy, capitalism, and the launch of the Women's Assembly movement. Now, in August last year, during Women's Month, a group of women protested at a traffic circle in Constantia under the banner #PatrickMustFall, and they had a lot of people, including myself, Googling frantically, trying to figure out who is Patrick. It turns out Patrick is patriarchy. This month, during International Women's Month, the Women's Assembly movement have officially launched, and we are going to be speaking to them after the break. But before that, we're going to have a look at some footage from the Patrick Must Fall protest. Let's have a look.
Patrick must fall. You know what? Patrick mustn't even exist. Patrick is the one that is on top of that very, very food chain. That is in charge. That one, he must fall. Patrick must fall. Al die jare sukkel onze mensen kan niet eten, onze kinders kan niet eten, maar because we moeten sit op die gejaal en pala. We coming for you. Lots of people don't understand what patriarchy is. What? And that patriarchy. That is Patrick. Patrick, we gave him a very simple name for everyone to understand. No women, no cry, the soldiers. No women, no cry, the women. No women, no cry, the soldiers. No women, no cry, Zabalaza, 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 Zabalaza. Patrick must fall! Patrick must fall! Patrick must fall!
That was some footage from the Patrick Must Fall protest last year by the Women's Assembly movement. We are going to take a short break, but we'll be back with more after this. Welcome back. You're still watching The Woman Show, and today we are speaking about patriarchy, capitalism, and the launch of the Women's Assembly movement. And joining me in studio today to speak about this is Henriette, who is the interim chairperson at the Women's Assembly movement, and Pheliswa, who is one of the youth members of the Women's Assembly movement. Henriette, Pheliswa, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having us.
So I wanted to open with the famous protest that was done last year during Women's Month under the heading Patrick Must Fall. It was huge visibility for the Women's Assembly movement, and it had everyone, including me, and I told you, Googling, like, who is Patrick? Patrick is patriarchy, and now you are launching, sort of officially launching the Women's Assembly movement. And so I wanted us to open with, what is the Women's Assembly movement and how did it come about?
Okay, so maybe if I can start, the Women's Assembly movement started, we've been working together now for a year, exactly a year since February. So some of our organizations, so we've realized that there's no working class women's movement out there that's addressing working class women's issues, and that we are all working in our various corners and our silos on particular issues and not broadly. And therefore we've been bringing women together and giving women political education, but also we've been doing psychosocial support for the members in itself, but also for the organizations and and teaching our women how to take it back into our communities where the psychosocial support needed. Okay, so we've been working for the past year, and we've said, okay, once we lay the foundation for ourselves and we figure out who we are and what it is that we want, we will launch a women's assembly movement. So after we've had a workshop last year, August, beginning of August, so and that culminated into the Patrick Must Fall campaign or protest that we had in Constantia. So what we've done is we looked at, during the course of last year, we've looked at violence, what is visible violence and invisible violence through a feminist lens. We've also looked at women, health and power, right, and those dynamics, and then we looked at race and class. And that then brought women to the realization, but we can fight GBV, we can fight for food security and all of these things, but at the base of all of these, patriarchy is there. And some of our women, Maureen, for instance, she couldn't pronounce, and a couple of our other women also, they couldn't pronounce patriarchy, you know, these high words, patriarchy, misogyny, and all of those things. And one of our members had to explain, this is patriarchy, what patriarchy means, and so forth, in the group work that they've been doing. And somebody just said, okay, so we can say it's Patrick, and it stuck with us. And then we went, Patrick Must Fall, and now our women are able to explain what is patriarchy and how it affects their own lives, and how them as women should also make the changes to fight patriarchy in our homes, in our schools, in our churches, wherever we find ourselves. Yeah.
So I want to thank you for that. I mean, it's so exciting. I'm so excited by it, and I'm especially excited. I'm always fascinated by the lack of knowledge we have around it, and I've always pointed the lens inward in that, you know, up until a few years ago, I thought, you know, being a feminist and being an empowered woman was just being a working mother and wife, right? That was, you know, that was the gist of it. Didn't know about patriarchy, didn't know about feminism. And so, Pheliswa, I'm excited by your presence because you were young. And just you know, before the show started, I want to tell the audience, we were just saying, you know, I often think now, what would have happened if I had had this knowledge sooner? So, in the spirit of understanding what is patriarchy and getting a youth lens of that, Pheliswa, can you tell us sort of what is patriarchy and explain some of the systemic stuff?
Yeah, so for me, I think I shared the same sentiment as you, because it was like patriarchy. As young as I am, you would think that, oh, she probably knows what patriarchy is, until I think at the workshop that we had, the 3 days workshop that we had, going to the march of the Patrick Must Fall, then I got to like understand it in a more broader lens of whether, like, what is it exactly, you know. So when we are young and we are free, we never really think that things will affect us, like will affect us at all. So as for me, I never thought that food sovereignty will affect me. It's like, it's nothing to me. You know, I'm young, I'll work for my own money. You know, I never thought like gender-based violence will like affect me. I never thought like ageism, like it's anything that will affect me. But then going into the Women Assembly and like sort of like understanding that we're not of the same age. We're not of the same age, and what can I get from them, and what can I use from that platform and use it to the younger people like me that are like looking outside and also thinking the same way that I thought before, that patriarchy doesn't really like affect me. We like to use Pheliswa just to think that people own us everything. We like to use things against people because we feel like, we always use the word parliament, and people in parliament, they're eating money, blah, 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 so it doesn't really affect us. But then going into the Women Assembly and understanding it in a lens of a young person who never really thought that it really affected them. So I think for me, it like it made like sense, like it made more sense.
I mean, that is my thing also, and I do want to ask, you know, as you learn about these things, because I think about, there are things, I think the lack of education around what this is means that you can't recognize patriarchy in your own life. So as a young person, I'm thinking, I was having a conversation with someone the other day, with a man the other day, his daughters, and we were just talking about how the emphasis is on girls and the way we look So with boy, you'll find if you have a girl and a boy, you'll say, oh, this boy's so clever and this girl is so pretty. And there's no reference to how clever the girl is and the thing that she's doing. And is that some of the stuff that you saw also when you started to notice how patriarchy is present in your life?
Exactly that, So I think in one of the activities that we had, we actually spoke about this. Like we always reference the young boy as the strong one, even at home. When you have a young boy and a young girl, we don't treat them the same. Like, and we make that normal. It's not like a taboo thing in our household. That is very normal. It's a young girl. She must sit upright. She must not play with toys. She must not play with cars. She must play with toys. She must do this. She must do that. And it's a young man. They're living together. They are being brought up differently. So what does that do? What does that make them? What will that make them to be? To come out to be. So those are one of the things that I think really was like, oh, okay. So now how do I change that? How do I now? Because how do I now take that information and take it and use it in a useful way so that it can be impactable to my daily life with my community work that I do in Kailicha and everything. So how do I now try and change the mindset of people that we have like a lot of we have everything to do with how we bring up our children. We have a lot of things. We have everything to do with how they come up to be. So if then we want to make change, I think let's start from the grassroots. It's a boy child. It's a boy child. It's a girl child. Let's try and treat them equally. Yeah.
Maybe I can just interject or add something exciting for me that happened after this workshops and education and so forth. Obviously, we had more than one session on it and so forth. So the exciting feedback that we, for instance, got from members. So one member came back. She's like very active in a church. And she came back with a story and she says, oh, Henriette, so I went to church and I did this, that. And father came and father said, no, Tanteka, not like this, like that. And I told him, stop being a Patrick. And he said, my name is not Patrick, Tanteka, who are you talking to? No, you're being a Patrick now. And then she explained to him what the Patrick is, and then he apologized. Another one in Blikkiesdorp, for instance, because everybody is now going, they've learned about what Patrick and patriarchy and all of these things. So they've been teaching and talking, and the children are also playing now in the streets in Blikkiesdorp. They're having a Patrick game. Patrick must fall game, for instance. You mustn't be a Patrick, and this is what Patrick means. So that is some of the exciting stuff. So it's our women are taking it back to the communities that we are coming from, and we are filtering it down to those around us and even in our families and the children outside on our streets. That to me is like a big thing.
That's lovely. And it is so exciting. And I wanted to ask you then also, actually, I wanted to come in and sort of expand on. So, we can acknowledge that many people haven't even heard of patriarchy or don't know what it is when they see it. I remember one of the best literature that I've seen is where they talk about many working class women are feminists without identifying, those who are single mothers are feminists and are fighting patriarchy without even realizing or embodying that label. And so I wanted to ask you, in a broader sense, if we can look at like what patriarchy is, and also you link it to, Pheliswa, when you're speaking about the way that we raise our children, the disparities, we talk about in the church, Patrick, and that paternalistic, I think, sort of ways like I know better because I'm male.
Yes.
That's some of the stuff. Like, what does patriarchy look like in a system so that all of us can sort of just start recognizing?
Yes. For me, if I have to put it, there's so much literature out there, so many beautiful women writing beautifully on patriarchy, whether it's Bell Hooks, Alice Walker, Audre Lorde, wherever. So
but can
how
I just
do we,
say though
yes.
that I have only just discovered, let's say, in the past 5 years, because then again, there's this, and I'm like, where's all of this been, and why don't I know it?
Yes. Yes. The nice thing of today's day and age and the internet and all of those things is people are about memes and we share memes that's talking to us. And so if you share those bell hooks and Alice Walker and Audrey memes and so forth, we're putting it out there what it is, and people identify with it without knowing that I identify with feminist thoughts, you know. But that aside, for me, patriarchy is a system, and it's got its tentacles across everywhere in our society. You know, whether it's manifesting itself in church, in our cultures, in our economy, in our education system, wherever we find ourselves, in our homes, in our religion, wherever we find ourselves, there's patriarchy. And if we go back into the history of patriarchy, we go back way before when we were all equal, and before the hunters and hunter-gatherers and those stories and land. So then when it came to with slavery and land and possession of land and women being sold into servitude, women being used as commodities to trade, slave trade or whatever. So we've seen patriarchy then finding its space into society, be it whether it was the church at the time, be it in society, castes and all of those things.
And our laws and our rules.
And our laws and our rules and everything. So who's holding the power? It's the men that's holding the power. What is our issues today that, and we've been kind of, what is the word? We've come to accept that this is the norm in society, but it's not the norm. And those of us who are saying it's not the norm, we are being told that we are aggressive, we are lesbians, we are everything that patriarchy doesn't say a woman should be. If you claim your rights, if you speak your mind and object, and then there's something wrong with you and you are not what society deems to be a good woman. Okay, so for me, it's how do we undo that? How do we, if we're saying that it's in our policies, our acts, our laws, our cultures, our religions, and so forth. So how do we stop the suffering of women? How do we stop? How do we stop the inequality, the grave inequalities that we are having? How do we stop the deep poverty that we have as women? Because poverty has the face of a woman. We can't deny that. Because a lot of us don't own land, we don't own the means of production, we don't have roofs over our heads and so forth. We're at the mercy of males, not only male partners, but be it an uncle, a father, or whatever. And if you don't step or toe the line, then you're being cut off and we're being chucked out. Why is it that we are having so many women in informal settlements? We don't know the stories of those women. Many of them ran away from gender-based violence, for instance, you know. So there's a need for us when we look, and I think that is why we're forming WAM, is to force the issue that we look through everything in life through a feminist lens. You know, so whether it is that food that's on that table, we need to look at that food. How nutritious is that food, and how does it affect my health, and how is it going to affect the health of my family, or even the child that I'm giving birth to? You know, because that's my responsibility as a woman. And men doesn't know, they don't care, they don't have that lens, you see. So we need to organize ourselves as women in a strong force and come together and dictate that it's enough, we can't talk anymore, you know. We need radical change, be it in terms of policy, be it the system, and we need to be honest. And we also have our own challenges. As women, we are in cultures or in religious or faiths, but we go back and we don't challenge the system of patriarchy within our homesteads or within our mosques or churches or wherever we find ourselves. I can talk too much, sorry, Pheliswa.
No, that's great. And I'm so interested also in the sort of, you know, Pheliswa, you mentioned it, you also mentioned it, the norm, normalization. So when we speak about, I wanted to ask you, when we speak about Pheliswa, you gave a great example of sort of the rules. When we say girls should be a certain way and boys should be a certain way. And so we've got that. and then that is a system of how we would be, and those are the things that we sort of accept. And so when you were speaking about that, I kept thinking, okay, how we raise our kids is resulting in what happens later on. And I wanted to sort of link the patriarchy to from that normalization to gender-based violence.
Yes.
Let's do the gender-based violence,
Yes.
for example, because we often, the problem is we don't see that link.
Yes, yes.
Okay, and so Henriette, and I thought maybe you could just draw a link for us. You know, in how patriarchy can result in high rates of gender-based violence against women.
Okay, so for me, you're putting me on the spot now, like very quickly. So, say I am a woman. I did not get the most education. I didn't go to university, or I went to university. I didn't complete university, or I was a high school dropout. Right. So, what is the jobs that our working class women have at their disposal today? Right, qualified or unqualified. So our children get out of matric. They sit, they go and work in a call center, they work as packers or cashiers. So we have low wage jobs, for instance.
Can
right?
I throw in an example?
Yes.
Because I met someone this weekend who's one of, I might be mistaken, let's say 10 children, right? 5 girls, 5 boys.
Yeah.
The boys all went to university.
Yes.
The girls were prevented from going to university and actually had to leave school really early to go and work and contribute to the household.
Yes.
So they were actively prevented from going to university. So let's say if we want to look at a systemic thing, they're obviously going to end up in a lower wage job through the system of preventing girls from studying further.
Okay. That's one of the exact things. Or and then in my family also it happened. So so it's like there's no money for you because I'm the only girl, you know. But then I made it. I went out and found myself some money to go and study, for instance. Okay, but nevertheless, so I have this low wage job. We can use the inverse of that also, me being educated and earning the most money and so forth, and then the man's ego hurting, and then gender-based violence coming from that because I'm not the man. You are earning more than me now. You think you are better than me, and all of those things. So we can use the inverse as well. So now let's talk about psychological abuse. Right? Let's talk about economic abuse and all of these things. So you are but just a cashier at a particular retailer. You don't have value. The man would then put your value to who you are, what you are earning, what your income is, right? And don't expect too much money. I'm giving you enough money, regardless. So if the income is, for instance, this is my income, this is for you, you must see to food. They put that money there for food, for instance, and I know women of it. They don't put the money there for the electricity. They don't put the money there for the child's, that 2 rand, 5 rand that they need for service and all of those other things and so forth, you know. So you as a woman have to scuttle, and you have to go through that mental trauma of making it work, you know, and having to run around.
We need to take a quick break, but we are going to continue the conversation after this.
Okay.
Welcome back. You're still watching The Woman Show, and we are speaking about patriarchy, capitalism, and the launch of the Women's Assembly Movement. And still with me in studio is Henriette Abrams, who is the interim chairperson of the Women's Assembly Movement, and Pheliswa, who is one of the youth members. And before the break, Henriette and Pheliswa, we were speaking about sort of what does patriarchy look like? So what is the chain that the system, and I think the example we gave was we looked at a family that has boys and girls. There might not be money for the girl to go and study, so she ends up in a low-wage job, and she, and how that affects her and how that is violent. Henriette, you were quoted in an article last year when you guys were doing the Patrick Must Fall movement, and I just want to read. You said, inequality is violent and poverty is violent. And we were saying how people don't always make that connection. So before we go into the politics of that, because I do want to a little bit, Pheliswa, I want to ask, you were saying earlier that you work in the community and that you are recognizing how patriarchy shows up in different ways. And I wanted to ask you, how do you experience, when we say inequality is violent, poverty is violent, how does the violence show up in your community, in the work that you do, in the experiences? I'm assuming you work with people and the experiences that they are facing. What does that violence look like?
So I will start by saying that it is very violent, and then we don't really like see that as patriarchy because it's always been like normal because men should act like that. We should let them act like that. So in the line of community work that we do, so in Mandela Park, there are a lot of like informal settlements, and then when we have to then now go and face on the service deliveries that we have to get, and then you are always faced with this man that will tell you that, who are you? Like, I will squash you very fast, and then that has always been something like that you should take and should be normal. But then now it has come to a point where like you'll be like, bring it on, like really bring it on, because I know my rights. I know that you're being patriarchal with me, and then I will deal with you as much as you think you can deal with me. So I think it has come to a point where we wrap it off to the women that are not afforded the opportunity to come to our workshops and like sort of like experience other community experiences. So we kind of like trying to take that experience, take what we learned from the Women Assembly and put it back on our community, and not just take it as in like speaking about it, but actually acting on it and making sure that we practice what we preach, we act on everything, we take it step by step, and we stand for ourselves.
I love that. I love that you brought in a rights-based approach. Henriette, I want to ask, patriarchy sounds like when we think about rights and we think about the fact that rights are denied. So patriarchy seems like a system of denial. You are human. You have a right to housing, food, education, etc. And these rights are then denied. A legitimized denial, because there are no consequences for the denial of that rights. I wanted to ask you, one of the ways, the last time you were on the show, you spoke about food poverty, and we went into that, how food poverty is violent. And one of the things that stayed with me is that you said, we live on an earth where we can grow our own food, right? We can grow food, and that's one of the avenues that you've pursued in trying to do food gardens and such, but cannot get is denied access to. So you're willing to grow your own food, but denied access to land to grow the food, financial resources to be able to purchase what you need to buy the food. And I did something else here also. Let me just see, financial investment and resources to grow the food. So, that is systemic, and I just wanted you to tell us a bit more about that in terms of the politics of food.
Okay, so that's one of my big topics, for instance. Look, we have enough food. This country, in the agricultural sector, is producing enough food, right? So it's the system. What is the system saying, right? So there's a demand and a supply. How do they manipulate the system? We are planting this, and we are planting so much so that there's not enough. So if there's not enough, the supply is high, the demand is high, the supply is low, the prices go up, right? So we have food inflation, okay? So not enough has been put into the market. So now you go to your favorite retailer, they don't sell everything. Where does that food go? Where's the food waste, right? Where does that go, and so forth, okay? So there's enough food. It's the system that we are. Capitalism tells us we need to maximize profits, okay? So, and the poor, if you don't have food, there's nothing we can do. You must go and work. You must go and work, earn money to come and buy food, right? So also, if we look at the government is extremely violent. So if we talk systemic violence, we always try to talk about violence. We talk about violence thinking that it's only when a man hits me, when he abuses me psychologically, when he abuses me economically. We don't look at the violence that the state is perpetrating, right? So if we're saying that we have a right to house, and they're saying adequate housing, What is adequate housing for the state? Be it your council that's delivering, or the city, or national government, or provincial government that's delivering houses. What is adequate housing for them? What is the state? So if they give our people in the informal settlements, what do they give them? They give them the metal sheets, IBR sheets, the roofing, and they give them a couple of poles and nothing. What does those RDP houses look like that they are building? What is the quality of those houses that they are building, and so forth? How violent is that for me as a mother of 3-4 kids having to live with in an RDP house that is cold, that is not, the floors aren't done properly, the what is it, the
Toilets are not even working.
the toilets aren't working, the walls are cracking. It's easy for the high violence that we're having outside, people breaking in and all of those things. What mental stress am I going through as a woman, as a mother, right? And to think that the state is perpetuating all of this kind of violence by not giving us adequate services. Are you with me? So another thing, look at all of the sewerage running around in our townships.
And adequate should be functional.
Adequate should be functional. Adequate should be decent for human life, you know? And it's not. This is what the system is thinking about us. This is what you want the house, this is what we're going to give you, you know? Whether we don't want the mansions. We want decent stuff, right? We want stuff that's going to speak to the dignity of our people, right? Stuff that's going to speak, if safety and violence is an issue, then we need to create stuff that takes into consideration the safety and the safety risks of women, for instance, and children, within particular areas and so forth. Look at all of the sewage that's flowing. A month ago, I had it in my house also. I had it in my house, so we are houses connected, for instance, in Bonteheuwel, and the city only came out. I had to sit for 48 hours, and of course, the children and I got diarrhea. We got sick, right? They're not preemptive. They don't fix the stuff before we have problems. They build more houses and they don't fix the sewerage and all of those things. And then, if you look at who are the people in our communities, in our working communities, that's on the streets, that does the complaining, that does the working, that feeds our people, that takes our children safely to school, in the neighborhood watches and so forth. So who are those people? It's our women that take care. They are the nurturers, the carers and everything, right? So why is it that the state, for instance, and business, and I've got a thing with the state always throwing money into business. Look at Eskom, always throwing money into business, but it's not throwing money into our poor communities for our people, either to get the skills and to build their own homes, to do their own roads, the state has money, we must be able to procure from them for food, and they must supply us with food, or with land, or with seeds, or with implements for our gardens, and so forth. No, it won't be in the interest of big business if communities become self-sufficient, you know. So there's a cahoots, they are talking to each other, and the one is in each other's pockets, and we, the poor, are left worse off than we were 10 years ago. And that is violence to me of the extreme. Thank you.
That's very powerful.
Yes.
Henriette, you know, you also said in, and I'm quoting from this interview, but you also said in the article, when you did the Patrick Must Fall, and the Patrick Must Fall protest took place in Constantia, you said to let the privileged know that they are a part of supporting a system of capitalism and patriarchy, and making them feel safe and secure against the poor. And I want to bring out, you know, when I was doing these questions, I also had the thought that we live with a very sort of westernized, individualistic sort of culture, that whether you are poor, that doesn't look at systems. That looks at whether you are poor, whether you're rich, that is as a result of your own self and your own, you know, no, not the systems, not whether you went to school or not, your own intellect, your own, if you're poor, you to blame for it. And so, you know, in that statement where you say we want to tell them that they are part of supporting the system of capitalism, I sort of wanted to say, you know, a little bit more context on that for those people for privileged people who don't think that capitalism has got anything to do with them, or poverty has got anything to do with them. I mean, and again, it's for context.
It's for context.
It's to broaden our mind, to
You know,
see, you know.
Sometimes, like I find myself so often, you attend some functions or programs or whatever, that people are very unaware of their privilege.
Yes.
In what they're saying, how they're saying stuff, how they're doing stuff, the assumptions and so forth. And there's a huge amount of education that needs to happen there. With privileged individuals and looking and thinking. So, say for instance, we take the COVID-19, okay, in 2020 or 2019 when it happened, right? So people gathered itself. Oh yes, the poor people there, they don't have food. How are they going to manage? And okay, let's see what we've got in our cupboards and send to those in the soup kitchens to the poor people. And it was like, we are all in the same boat. No, sorry, we're in the same boat, but you have a life jacket and another dinghy there that you can jump off. We will drown, we can't even swim, you know? So we need to teach people that what people take as their normal is not our normal. Look at food, for instance, okay? What is the diet of our people on our streets, in our working class areas? It's bread. 2-minute noodles, we call our children now the 2-minute noodle generation. How nutritious is that? People go and buy the sliced cheese, processed cheese. Processed cheese. What do we buy? Everything that comes in a can, a box, a plastic, whatever is processed food. What is the nutritional value of that food? Who can afford the organic food? So just look at privilege in terms of our choices of what we're eating and what we can afford, for instance, right? But you want to cast aspersions at these people. They can't, they don't know what they're eating. They must eat healthily. Or they want to give advice on health, not considering that we cannot afford these things. Now look at the ramifications and the repercussions of me, a pregnant mother, eating or living off non-nutritious food and passing that through my womb, not only to my daughter, but also to my granddaughter. They will also have problems, whether it's obesity, whether it's me being a diabetic, whether it is growth, brain stuntedness, right? So all of those things. And people don't know that. And they can't think like that if they're not educated. So they make assumptions. And there's this thing that I get so tired of. Privileged and very often white women and colored women would say on social media, you must stop getting children and go work. So casting us all as black women are useless, we're just making babies. Not knowing the circumstances that we are in, not knowing that I am sitting with 3 children who's my uncle's children because of abuse, sexual abuse and all of this. Some of these things are forced on me, I didn't do it willingly. Are you with me? But you are casting aspersions and making an analysis and assumptions on black people. Black women doesn't want to work, they're just good to get children, you know? So when it comes to, and them reinforcing the stereotyping, but also the system as it is, you must go and work. Why can't you say, how do we assist to build cooperatives that's of mutual benefit for a community or a section of a community? Why don't we change the system? Why won't we go work in a factory to produce something to sell to us? Why can't we produce it ourselves? Why can't we manufacture it ourselves?
Why don't we get some land to grow some food so that the community can be self-sustainable, which means they need to give out less.
And why don't we redistribute the land that has been taken from our forefathers? And why don't we go to the water that's in the hands of white big farmers? Why don't we go and take some of that water down? Because you can have land, but if you don't have water, you can't grow anything. Who's sitting with the water? Where's the power? Where's the access? Why isn't government taking off and giving it to women? Put it in women's hands in the communities. Because women are the carers, the nurturers. We are not going to let our children and our communities go hungry and run off and be corrupt as most of these men are in the system anyway.
Pheliswa, I want to ask you. You were speaking earlier about, learning all about the patriarchy, what patriarchy is, around the patriarchal system. And then you said, how do I now take this information and then incorporate it into my life, into my work, spread it out into communities. And so, do you speak to people about it? Do you teach it when you go and you go do the work? And what are people's responses to it?
I do, actually, I do. And then, as I've said earlier, is that we do work in our community. Before, when we were already like doing some work in our communities, so we had already had interest in how to grow the community, how to better the community. So with the patriarchy now taking it and like trying to show the community of how is this affecting us, how is this like pulling us down. So we do that a lot. We do that in the housing issues that we're facing in our community. We do that in the gender-based violence that we're also facing in our community. We do that in the everyday like bashing of the queer community, everyday bashing of the LGBTQI community, and then we're trying to like reinforce that the patriarchy thing is real. So how now do we like spread it out and make sure that everyone is aware of it, and how do we walk past it, and what are some of the activities that because young people get very bored easily, so we cannot come to them and talk about patriarchy and
Yes.
give them big words. What do you want them to do?
Can I ask you a quick question also? So young people get very bored, and I find older people are very resistant. Right? Do you find that? I mean, and if you think about the rules that they've lived by for so long, especially the gender rules, I see this with my mom and my granddaughter. So if I let my daughter go out wearing whatever she wants to wear, or her hair is not brushed, you know, the older generation will be like, they're quite shocked around that. Or if I, do equality between the girls and the boys, actually older generations will be like, and what about my daughter cars? You know, do you find resistance to some of the theory around patriarchy?
We do, because obviously it has been a norm for a whole lot of people for a very long time. So this has been normal to them. So there's nothing wrong. What are you saying? There's nothing wrong here. We've been like this forever.
Yeah.
So now you are coming now and telling me about patriarchy and telling me about we should do this, we should do that, we should engage in this, we should engage in that. Like, what is that? Like, go find something else to do. So we do find like resistance in a whole lot of things. But then I think it's the approach and how we sort of like try and think of the old people and try and think of the young people. And then with the WAM, then for me it has become very easy because we find Henriette, she's 60. And then I am here, in my 20s. And then how do we now find balance? We are not of the same age, we are not of the same generation. How do we find balance in like trying to make, we are fighting for the same thing. We're fighting for the same thing as much as the Henrietta's experiences are not the same as mine, but then we are fighting for the same thing. And how do we incorporate the different experiences from the different age groups and then try and work together and bring something beautiful and find a solution.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's lovely. I'll give an example, which was interesting to me once. I complain a lot about the fact that girls need to wear skirts at school, and that what they're wearing has got nothing to do with their education. And I believe that wearing skirts, my daughter came home one day and said, "Mommy, the whole break I had to stay." She thought it was funny to stand holding my skirt down. I thought, "But you didn't get a break." And they say, a lot of the older generation say that, "Oh, well, it's pretty." My mother also said. But then I said to my mother, "Remember that story you told me when you were Senate whatever and you jumped off the stoop and everyone saw your panty and then they made fun of you?"
Yes.
That wouldn't have happened if you were wearing shorts. And so we bridge those things. Ladies, we are out of time. This was such a wonderful conversation. I want to thank you so very much for joining us. I'm excited for the Women's Assembly movement, and I wish you all the best. We shall have you back and continue this conversation in education.
We must. I'm excited for you to come and meet some of the other women also. and hear the
Fantastic.
authentic voices, quite honestly.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yes.
We are going to take a short break, but we'll be back with more after this. Welcome back. You're still watching The Woman Show, and we have been speaking about patriarchy, capitalism, and the launch of the Women's Assembly movement. Now, we are almost at the end of our hour together, but before we go, we are going to watch some footage from the launch of the Women's Assembly movement, which was held in International Women's Month, March 2023. Let's have a look. Hi everyone, we are here at the Bertha Center in Woodstock, Cape Town for the launch of the Women's Assembly movement. I'm so excited to be here. The movement has been around for about a year and today they are launching officially.
I'm Lucy Davis. I'm from the area. I was joining WAM 1 year ago. It was last year. I didn't understand what is this patriotic thing means. So I asked them, what is this patriotic thing all about? And then they explained to me what is the meaning of the patriarchy. I can invite everybody and anyone to come to WAM. That's where we are growing. We are a great team. Lots of women in WAM. So we are partnership and we work very hard for this launch. So today I'm here, I'm grateful.
I'm Tasha Solomon, I'm from Delft, and WAM means a lot to me. As a woman and as a young lady that grew up, I never understood women's rights, but through WAM I have learned a lot, and I have learned what's my rights as a woman. I've learned about oppression, I've learned about women's rights and all that stuff. And last year, in between November and December, I experienced firsthand depression with my mother, and I felt that WAM actually gave me that to know what I'm dealing with, and I'm very much grateful for all the women out there. I didn't know a few things, but as I've learned, every woman has her own story, and as a woman, not to judge someone else because you don't know what that other woman is facing.
That was some footage from the launch of the Women's Assembly movement that took place in March 2023 during International Women's Month. And that brings us to the end of the show. Thank you for joining us. I hope that you learned a lot. I know that I did. But that's all we have for today. I'm Lenina Rassool. Goodbye.